This is TWiT.
Interesting story about ADSB. So I had never heard of ADSB, not being a pilot. But if you heard about the ElonJet tracker, that's what was using ADSB, which is a database. It's actually technically ADSB Exchange. And it was kind of like IMDb or Wikipedia. It was created by users. And the reason it worked is because jet airplanes all airplanes, I guess, have transponders transponding their tail number and their location as they fly around. That's how they know where everybody is. And air traffic control uses it, and I imagine other planes use it. Well, it turns out if you're an enthusiast, you can also have a little receiver on the ground and monitor all the traffic going ahead. And then if somebody were to write a way to aggregate that data onto a map, and you had enough people with those little receivers all over the world, you'd have a pretty good tracking map of all the flights. Well, that's what ADSB Exchange was. But, and I say was because it was owned by one person. A lot of people contributed, but Dan Strufert founded the site and was the sole owner of the site, and he sold it to JetNet, which was, by the way, owned by, get ready, a private equity company. And at this point, there is a little rebellion going on, including by the guy who does ElonJet, who said, I'm not going to use this data anymore, and I'm not going to contribute it to it anymore. It's understandable. I mean, the server costs, the hosting costs were expensive. ADSB Exchange couldn't really monetize very well. It's free to use, but they used advertising, and then they had a kind of higher paid tier. But it's, still an expensive thing to run. And so at some point, Strufert decided he was going to sell it. Jack Sweeney runs the ElonJet Twitter account, said, today is a sad day. If you feed ADSB Exchange, we encourage you to stop feeding. ADSB Exchange was founded on the principles of hobbyists, community, not for-profit private equity firms. So it'll be interesting to see. Within a few hours after the sale became public, the 11,000 feeders, 11,000 people running these receivers, dropped significantly to 9,500 people in a span of a few hours. I don't know where it stands right now. I'm not an expert on this, but I'd be very curious to see what happens. One user said, flight aware, flight radar, win, Elon wins. All the guys who are out to get us win. So, remember the saga of, ElonJet and Elon chasing it off Twitter, and he went to Mastodon, and then Elon blocked every Mastodon mention on Twitter. There's a final line in that story. It's kind of sad. Wednesday, they announced that they had been acquired, kind of like IMDb or CDDB or all these other. Fortunately, nobody's acquired Wikipedia. I hope not, and no one can acquire Mastodon. Again, this is the argument for these distributed places. JetNet is owned by Silversmith Capital Partners. They were acquired last year. The acquisition is the second of what the company anticipates will be several future acquisitions as JetNet expands its data-driven product offerings for the aviation industry. So you got a problem there if you've got volunteers freely uploading this data and suddenly you make a killing selling it and this private equity comes along. You need the volunteers, don't you? Anything to say about that, or should we move on?
I'm sort of sympathetic, I guess, to the volunteers. At the same time, the jets tracking stuff, I know it's legal. I'm not arguing the legality at all, because obviously you have to be able to, the FAA has to be able to know what planes are in the air, and I'm not questioning any of that. But I do think the jet tracking stuff is gross. I do.
Yeah. Well, I understand. Honestly, I understand Elon's point. I mean, but I mean, it's not exactly assassination coordinates. And Sweeney could have done some things to protect Elon, like delaying the tweet by an hour or two to give Elon a chance to move on.
And I'm not saying that it was assassination thing. I think that was the hyperbole. People in fandoms, like teenage girls, have been doing this for years for their favorite pop stars, and it was gross then, and they would put stuff on Twitter and on Tumblr and whatnot. It's gross now. I do feel for, I guess, like the aviation enthusiast community who feels like this thing they've been contributing to has now been sold to private equity who will be making money off of it. But at the same time, like, the data's either open or it's not. You know what I mean? Like, you can create your own thing, but I mean, this is public data for a reason.
I remember watching Gaga's movie, and I just watched Taylor Swift's Ms. Americana movie. And the thing that really sticks in my mind is these poor people go out of their doors of their apartment, and at any time of the day or night, there are hundreds of fans standing there waiting for them. They have to have big security guards just to get them to the car, and barriers. Right. And I'm starting to read. I'm, much to my chagrin, Prince Harry's Spare, and it's somewhat the similar situation. It killed Princess Diana. Right.
Well, and the way that a lot of the paparazzi finds where the celebrities are going to be is that they track their jets, because a lot of them if they own their own jet, then it's registered. If they are simply renting one, then it's harder. But Taylor Swift owns her own planes, and now she's doing the thing, I think, where she hides the registration, which you can do a certain way. People still, her fans are insane, and I say this as a big Taylor Swift fan, but not one who appreciates or encourages any of this, because I think this stuff is just gross and disgusting. The K-pop fans are the same way, where they will literally track exactly where people are at all times to try to know and put it up on the internet, and not realizing, and then they get mad about the paparazzi stalking their favorite stars. It's like, how do you think they're figuring out exactly where they're landing, and then showing up at private airports, or God forbid they're having to fly commercial, showing up literally a baggage claim, outside LAX. That's because people are doing things like this, and they're tracking their every movement. And there's something gross about that. And again, I think I'm not trying to say that everybody, in fact, most of the people part of this community are not involved in that at all. But I do think that, when we have those discussions, and again, I don't think that calling it assassination was in any way correct, but there is this very gross aspect of for high profile people having no privacy, because you have really obsessive people out there who are tracking their every move, and then in turn passing that on to people who are then going to take photos to sell for lots of money.
Yeah.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, a bunch of game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. You already knew all that. What you may not know is that TWiT now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club TWiT Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club TWiT exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club TWiT member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.